Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this hybrid virtual and in-person meeting of the MPO Board for Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. We are going to begin this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to take a moment before we begin to ask everyone to observe a moment of silence on behalf of Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Corporal Brian Levine and also the Capitol Police officers who lost their life last week. It's been a very sad and difficult week in this country, and a moment of silent reflection, I think, is appropriate as we start this meeting. All right. Before we begin our agenda, I would like to welcome our new member, Jessica Vaughn, newly elected to the Hillsborough County School Board. Is she with us virtually this morning? Joining us, we're glad to have you with us and welcome. We're also joined in person this morning by Mayor Ross's alternate, Councilwoman Sherry Donahue from the City of Temple Terrace, and she will be serving here through May of this year. So we welcome you, and we're glad to see you this morning.
Thank you.
At this time, we are going to have a roll call from the clerk. Here.
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 Can you communicate the microphone?
Klug. Overman.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here.
Lott.
Here.
Vaughn.
If Vaughn is unable to attend, I'm the alternate for the school board.
Ms. Vaughn, I believe you're muted. We should be able to hear you now.
I can't.
We can hear you now, ma'am.
Oh, you can. You can hear
Yes.
me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. I am here and I'm attending.
Wagner or Fry.
Here.
So just for those that couldn't hear that, we do not have an in-person quorum this morning. It's possible that we will develop one as the morning goes along. If we do not, we will just adjust our agenda accordingly. We'll do the business we can, and we'll have to put off some of the scheduled items for our next meeting. At this time, I believe that we're going to recognize two former members of the MPO board, and I want to just check and see if Commissioner Miller and Clerk Stuart are on the line.
I am here. It's good to see you all.
Well, I don't hear Commissioner Miller, but I'm going to start then with now Clerk of the Court, Cindy Stewart, and congratulate you, of course, on your new role. But that doesn't mean that we don't miss you on the MPO board, and we want to thank you at this time for your outstanding leadership and service to the citizens of Hillsborough County as the founding chair of the School Transportation Work Group, and if I remember correctly, the first school board member to actually serve on the MPO when the position was created. So thank you very much for your service. We have a plaque for you that I believe has been delivered to you, and if there's anything that you'd like to say, we welcome you to do that.
Cohen, and it's great to see you all this morning. This is actually a group that is near and dear to my heart. And so I'm going to miss attending these meetings, but know that I'm only a couple floors away. And I'll be watching and keeping in close contact with the people who I did have the pleasure of serving with. I want to recognize the executive director, Beth Alden, for all the patience that you had with the working group that we did form and all the work that we did do. And then the person who was really the brains behind the school transportation working group and my right hand and all of that. And I know she's on the call as well, but Lisa Silva was an amazing asset for me on MPO staff. And I can't let without recognizing her work and her efforts and her continued efforts to make sure that schools and traffic in and around schools and safety is a priority for this group. And making sure that we make those avenues for children to get back and forth to school as safe as possible in the most effective manner. So thank you all again for the opportunity. You know, and I know we are nationally one of the few MPOs that actually engages with one of the largest transportation systems in our county, which is a school district. So we set some national precedents there for people to start including school districts as they make transportation decisions. So I'm going to miss you all here in my new office. We're in our first week here, and so really excited about the work we're going to do up here too. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It was nice to see you. And let's see if Commissioner Miller is on the line.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
He is. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner Miller. Well, we wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your many years of service to the MPO, particularly as chair for years, and I know that it can be a challenging assignment, and I know that you have the gratitude of all of the citizens of the county for not just your wide variety of service, but particularly for the service that you gave here at the MPO, and wanted to ask if you wanted to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I'm sorry for signing in late when you're not a commissioner and want to take away your equipment. I had a problem signing on. So good morning, everyone. It's good to see each and every one of you. I just want to thank you for this opportunity. It was a pleasure to serve this county, this MPO, and all of you that were there and the new ones that are now involved. Congratulations. And Ms. Alden, thank you very much for being my sidekick as chairman of the MPO. I don't think I could have done much of anything if it wasn't for you being there and guiding me in the right direction. To harp on what Ms. Stuart said, and congratulations again, Ms. Stuart. This county is in desperate need of guidance for its direction and transportation needs upcoming, and that guidance is going to be on you all, working with the county commission and other entities in this county to make sure that things happen. It's going to be tough. Money is going to be tight. But with the brains that you have, the staff that you have, I know that you can get it done and everything can be led in the right direction. I just played a little part of being up on this MPO and getting these things done. But it was the work of all of you there that led us in the right direction to keep us on track. So I ask that you continue to do that. I ask that you work together. There's going to be differences, of course, but work together and please understand that you're doing this on the benefit of the people of this county, the 1.5 million people that need you desperately to work together to meet the needs of the transportation issues in this county. So again, thank you so very much. Hang in there, stay safe. And if I can ever be assistance, please pick up the phone or whatever and give me a call. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, again, Commissioner, thank you for your many years of service, both in the Senate and the Hillsborough County Commission. And we appreciate it. And like Clerk Stuart, I know that a plaque has been delivered to you in commemoration of this event. So thank you for joining us this morning. We are not going to move on to approval of the minutes since we do not have a quorum. We're going to go to public comment. We have, I believe, one speaker this morning, and that is Chris Vila.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just do a quick shout out to Les Miller. Thank you for allowing us to stay up really late and talk about transportation. I know I didn't get everything I wanted. I know many people didn't get everything they wanted, but I think at least the discussions kind of paved the way, to the importance of public comment, for one, and two, how people view transportation in the Bay Area. And from a result of that, we've gotten some great ideas from USF. We've gotten some great ideas from Josh Frank, which I'm going to talk about really shortly. Cindy Stewart, thank you for your service. Hopefully you can keep on, hopefully one day you'll rubber stamp those IOC funds. I know you're part of the process with AFT in that. So I first want to say something about, it's something amazing I just saw like about an hour ago. There is an article on the Tampa Bay Business Journal, and it's on Twitter. You can see the article there by Veronica Smith. And it's an article about removing the I-275 north and southbound ramps on Ashley. Can you believe it? So we're starting off the year with an excellent headline. Kittleson is working on it. Josh Frank is part of the team, and he did a presentation to the downtown CRA. It sounded like it went pretty well. So once this circles your way, your direction on your city boards or your committees, please just listen carefully to what he has to say. I'm assuming Harry and Joe know that like the city of Tampa has purchased 3 acres of land basically along Tampa Street by I-275. So there's tremendous opportunities to really open that up. We could probably triple that to 12 acres of affordable housing and mixed business use if we get rid of those ramps. And it would just be so much better and safer on Ashley. So I just wanted to do that quick announcement. And I'm going to roll on to something that I've just called on Gena Cruz to bring up in discussion points. Today is going to be the Senate meeting for transportation and tourism and so forth. I want to just tell you the figures that I have here on our budget, our transportation budget. Right now, FDOT is setting aside over $3 billion to acquire land for new roads. They're looking at $5.2 billion for new highway expansion. And they're looking at $1.3 billion to do toll roads. Now, take those numbers and consider this. They're only budgeting $300 million to transit, which I'm assuming hopefully it's rail, and only $45 million collected for all of these programs comes through motor vehicle license taxes. So you can see, you can hear what I'm saying. There's a massive deficit between like choices. And the problem is we're spending too much money and too much time making roads wider, dangerous, fast, and through cities. I'm hoping that this board will eject Tampa Bay Next this year. You're going to have an opportunity to do that. Again, you can amend the tip whenever you want. I already read your bylaws. I understand how y'all guys operate. But please get rid of this project and let's talk to our state leaders, our legislators, and say, we need to boost that $300 million. Hopefully, Gena Cruz will bring up that discussion, but I can't do it alone. She can't do it alone. They need your voice. They need to hear what you want for your county and what we want. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that's our only public speaker this morning.
Yes, sir, that's it.
Thank you very much. We're going to go on now to committee reports and advance comments. I know Bill Roberts is here from the CAC, and then we'll hear from Gena Torres from MPO Staff. Bill?
Good morning, members of the MPO. Welcome to the new members, and I will echo your words of appreciation for Commissioner Stewart, for Cindy Stewart and Commissioner Miller. And we appreciate their service as well as their support of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Our report is in your packet, but I want to hit on a few highlights of our January 6th meeting. At that meeting, the CAC had its organizational session and re-elected its 3 officers. Stephen Hollenkamp, Ricardo Fernandez, and I were re-elected. I'll serve as a chairman for another year. The CAC heard Dr. Wong's report on the safety performance targets. We recommended forwarding this to the MPO board with an amendment to include speed reduction strategies. I hope you'll give that some consideration in your meeting today. CAC also heard a report on the FDOT's Fowler Avenue multimodal study. There were a number of questions that came up as part of this report. I won't highlight them all, but a couple of them include a question and concern about walkers who may be physically or visually disabled and how they could navigate this intersection. there was a suggestion, three suggestions that had to do with a separate signal to be added to force vehicles to stop on the right turn on red. Consideration was expressed for a raised crosswalk to be added to make vehicles slow down, and also a suggestion that corners could be modified to 90 degrees to force right turn on red to slow down or stop before making that. The CAC actually voted to table this topic until the FDOT can respond to these comments. And then finally, we have forwarded to you a recommendation for a new member, Beatrice Zafra, as well as two other new appointments to our committee. And I hope that you will give those favorable consideration today at your meeting. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you for letting me come before you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any hands raised at this time with questions. I would note that if we don't have a quorum, we're not going to be able to take up those nominations, but we do think that a quorum may develop here shortly. So with that in mind, we're going to skip ahead to status reports now and do, oh, excuse me, you know what, before we do that, let me just go to Gena Torres from MPO Staff with advance comments.
And then some of the other committees had presentations besides the CAC. So in regard to your action items, which you may get to, the committee supported the Vision Zero corridor studies at their November meetings. Hillsborough County staff and MPO staff met in December to clarify the recommendations that you'll see today. Committees received status reports on near road air quality, City of Tampa's Vision Zero projects and speed reduction program, the Tampa International Airport Master Plan, Selman PD NEAS study, advanced notification, and the Transportation Disadvantage Board received updates on the Service and Innovation Grant, the TDSP kickoff, and the Sunshine Line. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee held a workshop in December, and they discussed the maintenance of pedestrian and bicycle facilities. Members continue to be concerned about the lack of maintenance and debris removal on roads throughout the county. They also reviewed the 2020 construction project highlights related to bicycle and pedestrian improvements. For advanced public comments, we didn't receive any Facebook posts today, but we received 6 emails. Gary Cloyd emailed appreciation to Executive Director Alden for the December MPO meeting and the coverage of Vision Zero on Fox 13 News. ITS Florida Puerto Rico District selected the Hillsborough MPO to receive the John W. Barr District Transportation Achievement Award. The award was created in '97 to recognize significant and outstanding achievements by an organization that demonstrate advancements of the transportation, engineering, and planning profession. And similarly, the Tampa Bay Institute of Transportation Engineers presented the MPO a plaque for the 2020 Project of the Year Award for our Speed Management Action Plan. Green Business Certification Incorporated emailed and are pleased to award Hillsborough County with the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design for Community Certification, achieving that LEED platinum level. The certification recognizes Hillsborough County's commendable efforts to meet its commitments towards sustainability. Diana Ramirez with Hillsborough County Engineering and Operations Department emailed to thank us for the letters of support for the county's 2020 Safe Routes to Schools grant applications. And lastly, an email came in from Dr. Evangeline Linkus announcing accreditation of USF's Master of Urban and Regional Planning program. So those are all the advanced public comments.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from board members? I don't see any, so we are, thank you very much for that information. We are going to move on. We're going to skip our action items for a moment and go to status reports. We have the FDOT quarterly report, and hopefully by the time we're done with that, our quorum situation will have improved.
MPO board members and staff, hopefully you can hear me. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. Normally by this time we're presenting to you or have already been presented to you our 5-year work program and any changes that were made as we go into the next fiscal year. But like so many other things, this year wasn't normal, and so we have not yet brought that to you. Actually, next month, you'll get the full detail regarding our plan. It will be going before committees prior to coming to you. However, we are in the process of briefing other MPOs who elected to go straight to the board instead of through, and I wanted to make sure you had all the information that we're sharing with the other MPOs so that you can be aware of our current budget situation and how that might impact our region. So last year, as we were building our budget, as most of you and your other agencies were, everything looked really good. Our projections were very solid. We had a 5-year revenue projection that showed continued growth, and so our budget was very robust. After the economy started to slow down back in the spring of last year, we knew that our revenues were dropping. You could see it by less cars on the road. That means less gas tax revenue. We had less tourists, so our rental car surcharges were down. There were less fees coming in for registration and other motor vehicle fees. But until late summer, we really didn't know, one, how much we were losing, and two, what the revenue estimating conference would project that over the next 5 to 10 years we would be seeing in terms of our revenues. So as I mentioned, the revenue estimating conference met several months ago, and when they did, they informed us that indeed we had lost significant amounts of our revenue through the gas tax revenue, tolling revenue, revenue that comes in through rental car surcharges and other fees and license and registration taxes. So what that required us to do was, by law, we have to balance our budget and our program to what the revenue estimating conference says we have available to us for our program. That is on top of reductions that continue to come in every year because of the increased number of electric vehicles that are entering into our state, and we'll continue to see as electric vehicles become more prominent that they, of course, don't pay gas taxes, and so we start to see revenue projections going down there too. But overall, we have about a $1.4 billion decrease that we had to make into our 5-year work program. We are the only state agency to operate on a cash flow basis. In other words, we don't always have all of the money available when we program the projects and sign the contract. Otherwise, we'd be waiting many years to start projects that might take 4 or 5 years, like the Howard Franklin Bridge and other projects in the region. As a result, we have about $14 billion in outstanding obligations, which were already obligated prior to the time that we knew that our revenues were going to drop. Now, fortunately, the governor issued an executive order, Order 20-275, that allowed us to reallocate and balance funding across all programs for the current fiscal year. A number of our programs are statutorily required to be funded at a certain level. In other words, you could say $500 million for this program or $600 million for this program. If we were not able to spread the cuts across all our programs, we would have had to have stopped some of our construction projects because we wouldn't have had enough money to cover this year's cuts. But because of that executive order, we were able to do that. I will say there were certain things that were exempted from any reduction. One was executed contracts. We're not going to stop construction projects. We're going to continue to move forward with all of those projects. Of course, our debt service on any bonds or anything else that we owe debt service payments on, any planned safety projects are held harmless, as well as any planned preservation-related projects. In other words, keeping our roads and bridges and so forth in a state of good repair. We also were impacted on the federal level. When the FAST Act was extended for a year, one small byproduct of that was that the fund allocation was revisited because by law, every state has to get 95% of what they sent to Washington back in return. That resulted in 47 states, including Florida, receiving less less money in this fiscal year from the federal government than we would have gotten in previous years. Now, the majority of the cuts to our program were in the Strategic Intermodal System program, which is our biggest program. The Strategic Intermodal System program is determined and developed at the statewide level through our central office with input from the district. But the money is not spread out based on population, based on gas tax revenues, or anything like that. It's purely based on statewide priorities to provide a regional network for the movement of people, freight, and goods. Unfortunately, we had the biggest program in the SIS in the 5-year. I say that unfortunately, actually probably fortunate that we had it in the program, but unfortunately that means that we took a pretty big hit when it came to the reallocation of the funds. Next month you'll hear in more detail the program modifications, but I'll briefly go over some of them with you, the more significant ones. First, Tampa Bay segments 4 and 5, better known as the West Shore Interchange, has been moved out 2 years. We had originally hoped and then planned to procure that project and award the contract in the fall of 2023. Now it looks like it'll be the fall of 2025. Although not in Hillsborough County, still part of Tampa Bay Next program, segment 2, which runs from basically the Gateway area and the Gateway project currently under construction down 275 to tie into downtown St. Pete, was moved from 2025 to fiscal year 2031. The US 41 at Causeway Boulevard project moves from fiscal year 2026 to the cost feasible plan. All other projects in the SIS stay essentially where they were. And these include projects like the I-75 Big Bend Interchange, the I-75 and MLK Diverging Diamond Interchange, and the operational improvements on I-275 just north of Interstate 4 up to Hillsborough Avenue. So what are we doing going forward? Well, obviously we're going to work very closely with the MPOs, our partners, as we look forward. But one thing we're not going to do, we're not taking our foot off the pedal in terms of being ready to procure the projects in the place where they were previously. Even though they're moved out, we are optimistic and hopeful that there will be additional funds available and accessible to us that will allow us to hopefully move those projects back in. We're also going to look to advance other projects that we may be able to advance if funding becomes available to make room available in the fiscal year 24, 25, and 26 to recover those projects. Some of the things that we anticipate, one, we know that there was $10 billion in the most recent COVID relief bill for state departments of transportation. We're hopeful that we can use our share to help us with these projects. But I do caveat that with saying that we do not yet know what the rules will be for the use of those funds. And so we have to make sure we're available and comply with the rules. However, we may be able to move other projects around and still comply with the rules, but we want to be ready to utilize that. And of course, as everyone hears, there's hope for a federal stimulus package for infrastructure. And if so, we're going to be ready to take advantage of those dollars to bring projects in our region to advancement. And then we're also looking for opportunities to advance the operational improvements within the I-275 and I-4 interchange. Those improvements could be accelerated, and although not in the current work program, depending on the amount and type of money available, that may be something we can look at as well. So with all that being said, next month you'll get all the details, but I did want you to get the framework that we're working within. One thing that I would say from the SIS program, and I know we've done this a great job on this in the last few years, and it's why the program was developed for the West Shore Interchange in the first place, is we need to remember that this is looked at from a regional basis. There are a lot of folks around the region that are already coalescing behind support to move the West Shore Interchange back in if monies become available. They'll be looking to us as a region to see how strongly we feel for that compared to how strong Miami or Orlando or Jacksonville feel about their projects that are being deferred. So I would just say that if you are, committed, and I know most of you are, to the West Shore Interchange being built as quickly as possible, that we make sure to communicate that as we're asked for input on our program. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them.
All right, let me look around. Are there any questions from board members at this time? I have one question. The Revenue Estimating Conference is meeting periodically. Do you have a sense, are they meeting again before you come back to us in February? Is there a chance that they may revise their estimates upward or downward?
No, the last one that they had was actually just in December, and the only thing that really changed, there was very little change in terms of our revenues, gas tax revenue. I think they're waiting to see how the virus vaccine rollout goes and if tourism starts to come back. And when that does, I think we'll see more. The one bright spot in all of this, believe it or not, was that dock stamp revenues went up. And dock stamp revenues is where we get our funding to help with transit New Start projects. So that's really how we were able to compete and bring in $67 million of state matching funds for the Tampa streetcar modernization and extension project. So there's little bits of good news in there, but on the major revenue sources that we have not seen them. I don't anticipate until after the legislative session that we'll see another revenue estimating conference.
Ms. Alden.
I just wanted to let you all know, I'm sorry, I need to leave my mask on while I talk, I forgot, that the complete list of funding changes for the draft tentative work program is in your agenda packets. So including the changes to the West Shore Interchange, the timing of that the Secretary mentioned, and a number of other smaller projects.
And I would just point out that the delay in the West Shore Interchange project is a major headache for the people that commute over the Howard Franklin Bridge in both directions every day, but particularly the ones coming from Pinellas into Hillsborough County where the lane's bottleneck. So I'm sure we also want to express some gratitude that the Big Bend I-75 project is still in the plan. So it's a mixed bag. Are there any other comments or questions from board members? Action items. We are going to go ahead and have the Vision Zero corridor study for Hillsborough County presentation. We have a group now of 8 people in the room. I believe we need one more in order.
We have our quorum.
Do we have the quorum? Okay, we have the quorum. So with that, I'm going to go to item number A. Thank you, Mr. Klug, for joining us. I thought we still needed one more, but I now see that we don't. So I believe Mr. Clarendon.
Good morning. This is Rich Clarendon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm having some bandwidth issues, so I have to keep my camera off. However, I did want to report the recommendations for new committee appointments. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the representatives from the City of Tampa Transportation Division will be Alana Brazier with Stephen Benson as the alternate. On the Citizens Advisory Committee, the nominees are David Bailey, appointed by Commissioner Overman, Carolyn Brown, appointed by Commissioner Myers, and Beatrice Zafra, who was nominated by the CAC to fill the at-large seat for a person under the age of 30. And then last but not least, the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board would like to have Councilman Luis Vieira to represent Hart, with Councilman Gil Schisler as his alternate. So those are the recommended committee appointees.
All right, do we have a motion and a second?
So moved. Citro.
Second.
Motion from Councilman Citro, seconded by Commissioner Kemp. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair.
All right, thank you very much. That motion passes. We are going to move on to the Transportation Improvement Program Amendment, Fowler Avenue intersection improvements.
Comment, those of us that are virtual are not being heard.
I'm being told that those that are virtual are not being heard. I did not, Commissioner Overman, I did not see your hand go up.
Good morning, Board. Good morning, Board. Can you hear me?
Excuse me, let me just go to Commissioner Overman for a moment, because I believe she had something she wanted to say.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. Yeah, I did have my hand up and I do know there's a delay, so I appreciate being recognized. I just want to say how much I appreciate those that have asked to serve on these committees. I was very proud to ask David Bailey to retain. He was interested in staying, and that's I'm glad to have that. But I also want to make mention of Beatrice Sada. She had been an intern in my office, learned a great deal about transportation in that effort. So I want to recommend anyone that's using interns that they end up becoming great public servants and volunteers in our network. And I want to thank her for volunteering. I just want to commend all of those that volunteered, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Overman. I don't see anyone else with their hand up, but if you do have your hand up and don't get recognized, please don't be shy. We are going to move on to item B, the Transportation Improvement Program Amendment, Fowler Avenue intersection improvements.
Good morning, Board. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. This is Vishaka Raman, MPO staff. Beth, I can't see the content. Have you started sharing that?
I have. If HTV could put the slides up on the screen.
Yes, Ms. Olden, I believe it might have froze not sharing it. I'm seeing that it's trying to share too. If you can stop sharing and reshare, that might fix the problem.
Right. I don't have a way to do that, to hit stop sharing. It's not giving me an option.
Stand by 1 second.
Approval of the minutes of December 1st, 2020, as long as we...
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Councilman Citro for approval of the minutes of December 1st, 2020. All those in favor, please
Aye.
indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, let's see if we can...
Oh, I got a message that I'm now the presenter.
So perhaps I'll move on to item C and we'll come back to item B. How is that? All right, we're going to move on to item C, which is the bylaws amendment for the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board. Good morning, Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Commissioner and board members. Joshua Barber, MPO Staff. I'm here for the second reading of a bylaws amendment for the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board. As we all know, the governor's executive order that suspended the in-person quorum requirements for public meetings has expired. So as a result of this, our Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board has moved to request that the MPO board amend the bylaws for the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board, lowering its quorum requirements to 5 people. The coordinating board represents a variety of vulnerable vulnerable groups and includes representatives from the elderly, persons with disabilities, and other communities. And the board makes this request to ensure the safety, health, and overall well-being of the Transportation Disadvantaged Coordinating Board members, staff, and the public, and to ensure that the MPO and the coordinating board are able to continue to conduct business and meet the requirements of the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged Planning Grant. The specific language is included in the bylaws. It is highlighted under section, give me one moment, 5.7 under quorum, which states a simple majority of the total non-vacant membership of the MPO or MPO committee shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business at all regular and special meetings and public hearings, except for the Transportation Disadvantaged Coordinating Board, and 5 members shall constitute a quorum for that board. With that, I'd like to ask you all to approve this bylaws amendment. And any questions?
Before we do that, I do see a couple of hands up. Councilman Dingfelder.
Mr. Dingfelder, we're not getting any audio from you. It looks like you're not muted, but I'm not sure if you have a headset in. If you go down next to the mute button, there should be a downwards arrow. If you click down the downwards arrow, there should be a button that says Use System Internal Settings. That should help it. If not, then we would say the best solution would be to back out of the meeting and rejoin. Sometimes that'll fix it as well. Mr. Dickfelder, if you back out of the meeting and click on the rejoin with the email that you should have, it will probably fix the audio issue.
To Commissioner Smith, and we will see if we can fix the problem for Councilman Dingfelder. Commissioner Smith.
Right, I just, as the chair of the Transportation Disadvantage Committee appointed by this body, MPO, I just would ask for your support of this bylaws recommendation. It's especially important for this group, although, you know, I would also support any other subcommittees of our MPO for taking similar action. But in this case, as was pointed out, many of the members are citizen volunteers and with various disadvantages from whether financial or physical, as I believe Commissioner Overman noted at our last meeting. So it makes sense to allow a lower number of people to participate remotely. I think that our governor, in lifting his order about in-person quorums, may not have considered all the unintended consequences of physical quorum requirements and the health risks, not only for elected officials, but for private citizens who volunteer to serve on many of our boards and committees that fall under the requirements of an in-person quorum, who are now having trouble reaching quorums. And so it's an especially onerous burden for volunteer citizen participants on all these boards and committees to have to mount a quorum when they may have special health risks to doing so. But certainly in this case, I would ask for your support, and also say I'll support the similar action for any other committee or board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Is there anyone else? We do. I'm just looking to see if there's anyone else that wanted to comment before we go ahead and ask for a motion to support this item.
I believe we have Mr. Dingfelder back. Can you hear, sir?
I can hear you. We can hear me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can.
Hey, everybody. Mr. Chair, just for the record, I've been on since 10:05. I think I missed the roll call. but I've been on virtually. And I was just wondering, as a point of order, it seemed like previously when we were doing virtual meetings, we did roll call votes. Did you discuss that earlier, or?
I didn't. This is my first real meeting as chair, and my recollection of the way these meetings were held in the past is that if there was a roll call vote required, it would usually say so in the agenda. Is that correct, Ms. Alden?
That is how we did it in the past. However, since we've been doing these virtual meetings, we have been doing roll call votes, and we're prepared to do roll call votes for all of the action items.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead then? I think it was fine with the first two that they were clearly
To slow things down, Harry, but I just want to make sure we get it right.
No, I got you. I think those first two votes were clearly unanimous, but we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on this item. It has been proposed by Commissioner Kemp. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Donahue. We'll go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Cohen,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Donahue,
Yes.
Doughty,
Yeah, yeah.
Myers,
Yes.
Klug, Dingfelder, Overman,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Lott,
Yes.
Vaughn, Wright,
Yes.
motion carries 14-0.
All right. Thank you very much. We are going to move on now to the Vision Zero Corridor Study for Hillsborough County. Ms. Silva.
Go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I've been having audio problems this morning. This is Cameron Clark. Just to pick up on a point that Councilman Dingfelder just made. I've been having some audio problems, but there's only one action item that is on your agenda that is actually required to be a roll call vote. I know that we have routinely been doing roll call votes because of the remote attendance, but item B on the agenda, which is a tip amendment, pursuant to state statute, that's required to be a roll call vote. Because of the audio problem I had, I couldn't hear whether it was done that way, but if it was not, it would need to be done as a roll call vote. Can Ms. Alden, was that done through roll call?
No.
We have not taken action on that one yet, but I have restarted. So if I could try resharing those slides for that TIP amendment, then we could consider that one.
All right, so we're going to try to go to item B then, and we'll do item D after that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. This is Vishaka Raman, MPO Staff again for the records. And today I'm going to be presenting the TIP amendment for the fiscal years 2021. This amendment is for the intersection improvements along Fowler Avenue at 5 intersections that FDOT has identified. Can we move to the next slide, please? So I would just like to mention the details of this TIP amendment. As you can see that this amendment is for bicycle pedestrian improvements, predominantly along the 5 intersections at Fowler Avenue, Nebraska, 15th, 22nd Street, Bruce B. Downs, and 56th Street. This amendment is part of the bigger study what FDOT is conducting for the University Area Fowler Avenue Safety Multimodal Feasibility Study. This study is the shorter term actions which focuses on bicycle pedestrian safety features. FDOT identified that these were some of the 5 locations where there were high bike ped activity and which was a chance of more crashes. This project will be constructed using the design build contract, which may help to expedite the construction of the project. Next slide, please. Some of the potential corridor improvements that the main study identified where mainly can be split into two, safety and operational, and transit and efficiency feasibility. So this, for the safety, mainly the study will look at tightening the curb radii at some of the intersection corners, which by doing so, the pedestrian crossing distances will be reduced and which will also create more crossing opportunities for the pedestrians. The study also identifies to lower the vehicle speeds in some of these segments, and thus also reducing the bike-ped vehicle conflicts. And also the study focuses on upgrading the lighting at some of the intersections. For the transit flexibility, the university study identified that there were planned HART BRT improvements. Some of them were presented at most of the other committees before. FDOT identified that some of the shorter and the long-term improvements could be back lanes, business lanes, BRT median corridors and such, which would be anywhere between a major construction. And that is identified for the Fowler Avenue in the longer term. But then this would help to, this would also be used with the innovative intersection designs wherever feasible. Next slide, please. These are some of the 5 locations that this study identified. Like I mentioned before, it starts from Nebraska, 15th, 22nd, Drewsby Downs, and 56th Street. Next slide, please. I would just like to show here at this time some of the concept designs that the FDOT has proposed. I got this from FDOT staff, and these are just, keep in mind that these are preliminary designs and proposed concepts. All of these intersections would require PD&D, and at that time, the details would be analyzed more. So I would just like to point some of the key features here. At Fowler and Nebraska, the pavement markings would be removed. If you can notice that the corner curb radii is improved, and the pedestrian bike lane ends are installed. At advance, wherever the bike lane crossing is there, the curbs are the curb inlets are also replaced. Next slide, please. At 15th Avenue, similarly, the existing curb radii are changed. They also the nose is also changed here, and the pedestrian crossings and markings are redone. Next slide, please. At Fowler and 22nd Street, there is pedestrian detector is being installed. If you can notice that the median is redesigned and the medium nose is brought closer to the intersection. Thereby, it provides a safety place for pedestrians when they are crossing. And the radii is also changed at the corners. Next slide, please. At Drewsby Downs, similarly, the median nose is redesigned. There also includes assembly or installation of 4 new light poles for pedestrian detection. And also the crosswalks are re-illuminated and the markings are redone. So it'll help to for better pedestrian visibility. Next slide, please. At 56th Street, similarly, the intersection is brought closer and the crossing distance is considerably reduced. This intersection also includes the installation of 4 new light poles for better pedestrian visibility, and also the existing sidewalk is removed. The curb radii is changed to flatten the curve so that the vehicles can stop, see the pedestrians, and make the turning. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 intersections that were identified, and this tip amendment would be directly to the construction phase. And FDOT is requesting to add 1.7 million for intersection improvements along Fowler Avenue. Like I mentioned before, this is part of the Vision Zero project and part of the university area multimodal study. With this, I request, next slide, please. That'll be the last slide. I request to approve the tip amendment, please.
All right. Commissioner Kemp, did you want to be recognized?
Yeah, the presentation's finished, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I know that, first of all, well, I just wanted to move it, but I wanted to say that I'm deeply grateful to Secretary Gwen, and I know Ms. Donahue lives in Temple Terrace, but oh my God, Fowler Avenue is just desperately in need of a remake, especially with the pedestrian use. And I have to tell you, it's the #1 place when I ever drive it. I can always guarantee you that I will see, I don't know why it is at Fowler Avenue, someone struggling in a wheelchair going across the bicycle lanes. When I see the shrinking of 56 and particularly 56 in Fowler, but every one of those intersections are so incredibly dangerous. And pedestrian use is, it is just we have a university there, but we also have a lot of seniors there. The needs to make that a more walkable and start to really transform that place, which I know there's also the intentions of a very serious BRT, bus rapid transit project going from the university across Fowler and basically down a little bit of Nebraska and then over down to Florida downtown. And I'm very excited to see that come on board, but I think we'll really see a transformation of the transit-oriented development that we all talk about in that area. It needs to be, just seeing everything that's going on there. But this is maybe a small step for some, but it's kind of a giant step for Fowler Avenue to start to transform Fowler Avenue, and I'm very relieved. And I didn't catch exactly with this design when somehow I missed when construction or when any work could be started.
So the funds are within this fiscal year.
Oh, so right away?
We do have a DOT representative on the line who could answer that.
Yes, this is Justin Hall with FDOT District 7. We actually had bids come in low on another project, so we were able to fund this for construction in current year. And we actually got approval from Tallahassee to execute it as a low bid design build, which enables us to get it in the field even faster, which is why this TIP amendment is very important, because the procurement process to get the contractor out there is 5 months and the fiscal year ends, in 5 months. So this is our last chance to get this TIP amendment in to get this safety project in the ground. And just one more thing too, in the highlights, you'll see we also have funded the PD&E design and construction for the ultimate Fowler Avenue, which I know is something that's very important to everybody, and we've had a lot of conversations on. So starting next year, we'll move into the PD&E phase, which is very heavy public involvement, and then design and construction. So the improvements are coming. This is just kind of the first step to try and get some safety stuff in the field.
Just really amazing, and I'm so happy that I don't have to wait till 2030. We're just so used to,
like everything
it's
else,
a decade,
right?
So that is really, really wonderful news. I'm really grateful, and I'm certain it will save lives. But not only that, it will make the quality of life and the ability for people to cross, and just the people that I see running across there, and the difficulties pedestrians have. Particularly at that road is, we have a lot of roads in need, but that's one of them. And so it's really good to see those changes.
Thank you for that. And you did ask to move the item. I'm going to hold that until we're done with a few hands are raised. I have Commissioner Myers and then Commissioner Smith and then Councilman Citro. So Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say that I am just so elated to see these improvements that are coming in District 3, in particular on Fowler Avenue. So when we come to that, I'd just like to go ahead and second that motion.
Okay, we will go ahead and do that. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, I echo everybody's enthusiastic elation that we are able to move quickly on these. I believe the FDOT representative just answered one of my questions. Our CAC report noted that CAC was asking for more time to review, but I believe, and maybe the FDOT representative can confirm, that we don't have time for that because to review and act in another month, because this money needs to be spent this year and the fiscal year is almost over, and so delay would be a problem. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we did receive the CAC's recommendations, and we will consider all of those in the study phase for the ultimate. They were all good recommendations, and so we will definitely take those into account.
Great. So we don't need to amend the motion now or get board direction to ask you to evaluate other safety ideas while you're doing that. I know what I mean is, I know they had said something about some details about looking at putting those crosswalks up on speed tables or some other things. I had thought this would be a perfect time to ask about or consider painting the bike lanes green, at least at the intersections, and painting bicycles on them. I mean, what this would inevitably entail would be some painting. So, you know, while you're out there painting, that you might consider some details like that, whether you could go ahead and incorporate paint, you know, filling in the bike lanes green and other details like that. Do you need board direction or is that already part of the plan?
We do not need board direction. We've actually added some of that into the consideration for the scope, and also the ultimate configuration has some wide separated multi-use facilities as well. So it really is a big improvement for the corridor that you'll see, you know, going to construction within 5 years. So.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, Councilman Citro, and then I see Commissioner Overman wants to be recognized after that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Secretary Gwynn, if you're still there in Mr. Hall, I believe it is. I will support this, but I do have a question. There is a CSX track that runs parallel to Fowler Avenue from Bruce B. Downs almost all the way to Nebraska. Can we divert some of that funds and use that part of that right-of-way or the alleyway there that backs all the retail along Fowler for the bicycle lane there? If I were riding a bicycle along Fowler Avenue, I would have many concerns that there is not a buffer between the street and the bicycle lanes. And I know that there are more and more vehicles that are more concerned now about bicyclists. However, I would feel concerned. Is there any way that we could look at paralleling that CSX right-of-way for the bicycle lanes? Just a question.
So the concepts, we've got several concepts on Fowler, but all of them have a separated bike lane. So the bike lane is not adjacent to traffic. There's actually a physical barrier between the traffic and the bicyclists. We do not have right-of-way funds. We don't have a right-of-way phase program for this because we don't need any right-of-way along Fowler Avenue for the improvements, because what we're doing is really shrinking the footprint, not growing the footprint. So that would definitely, like looking into the CSX rail, that would require a new phase and additional environmental clearances. But we are separating the bicyclists physically from the traveling public, from the vehicles.
Physical barrier between the bike lanes and the traffic lanes.
Yes, sir. There will be a curb and median between the physical travel lanes and the bike lanes.
Very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Safety is always first.
Commissioner Overman.
Thank you very much. And thank you for both of those questions and comments when it comes to the bike lanes. This area desperately needs walkability, and all of these improvements will get us there. And when we increase walkability, we also increase access to using cycling from getting to place. So I'm very pleased to see this project move forward. I'm very pleased to hear that there will be efforts to protect cyclists as they choose to utilize this route. And I'm very also excited to see that, you know, we are seeing some improvements in movement on the Hart's BRT project, that I think it's critically important that we coordinate those efforts and talk to Hart about their stop design and see if there's ways we can not spend money twice. I'm always really interested in spending it only once. And so where we can coordinate with Hart's BRT project for improving access to the transit investments that are not only there, but also coming, I think it'll be very valuable money spent. So thanks again for moving this forward and finding ways to get it spent as quickly as possible and making those changes to improve Fowler Avenue for the citizens that utilize it on a daily basis. And I'll stop there.
I don't see any more hands raised at this time. I do want to just say a very wise person once pointed out to me that these roads were not constructed for pedestrians, and that is an understatement. But the fact is that some of the saddest moments I spent on city council were when we would receive a report that someone was killed trying to cross Fowler or Bush or some of these really high traffic corridors. And I remember in Fowler, the case of one school child was so sad, and it was something that could be prevented by the type of work that this project is going to do. And I agree with everything everyone said. This is really a long time in coming, and very, very welcome news. So with that, we have a motion from Commissioner Kemp. It was seconded, I believe, by Commissioner Myers, if I remember correctly. Let's have a roll call vote on this.
Cohen,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Donahue,
Absolutely, yes.
Dowdy,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Overman,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Vaughn,
Yes.
Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 14-0.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, that is a great segue into our next presentation, which is the Vision Zero Corridor Studies for Hillsborough County. And I believe that's going to be presented by Lisa Silva.
Silva, MPO Staff. I have the privilege of doing the introduction to this big project, but I was partnered with Wade Reynolds of Staff 2. So we took 8 corridors and divided them 4 and 4. So I'll be introducing, and then our consultant team, which I call a dream team, will take over and present the details. I will point out that you're used to getting 1 corridor at a time in a presentation, and today we're going to attempt to do all 8. So you'll be getting a high-level overview, but the details are very abundant on our website. So next slide, please. So this is a Vision Zero implementation project. We focused on the tract of Paint Saves Lives. Next slide. Vision Zero for our audience is that we're targeting to get down to 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. The purpose of this study was to tackle the 8 most dangerous in the unincorporated Hillsborough County area. Because this project, we're very pleased, we received some funding from the Board of County Commissioners in one of their budget reconciliation workshops. So thank you for that. It's been a true partnership with Hillsborough County infrastructure and public works staff. We've been working together, so it's been like a co-project management situation. Again, we focused on low-cost engineering strategies, so you won't see that ultimate fix, but you will see some get out there and quick hotspot type of treatments. It focused on the Paint Saves Lives engineering solutions, but of course, every corridor recommendations complemented by our public education strategies and our law enforcement partners as well. During our review of the and development of these corridor recommendations, we really want to thank Hillsborough County staff. They worked very hard in helping us develop what you'll see as the recommendations today. And we do have public input. Next slide. So here's how the project team breaks down. The four that were managed by Ray Reynolds and his team of consultants were Gibson Drive, Mango Road, 15th Street, 78th Street. And then I managed Shelton Road, Fletcher Avenue, Bruce B. Downs, and Lynn Turner Road. Next slide. When we did the project, we bumped up against the challenge called COVID-19. So we quickly turned to get more creative with our outreach. So we developed an online survey and posted videos explaining the project. They were on our Plan Hillsborough website on a special page. You'll see here that we developed a flyer and we distributed it along the corridor. So you see Wanda West and different staff going out to drive-up windows, bodegas, barber shops, because again, we were targeting our communities of concern, making sure that they also were able to provide feedback. So that physical distribution along the corridors. Took advantage of some homeowners associations were meeting virtually online. So we invited ourselves to make presentations there. And then we distribute it through constant contact to all the people that participate in our newsletters. And of course, use social media and presented to committees for feedback. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. First corridor will be Mango Road, and Kelly Fearon will be presenting. I'll let Kelly unmute herself and begin the presentation.
Kelly Fearon with Kimley Horn, and I'm going to give a brief overview of the corridors Mango Road, or County Road 579, and North 15th. Next slide, please. So our study segment of Mango Road was from State Road 574 to US 92, and this section of Mango Road is a 2-lane undivided roadway, 45 miles an hour, with residential, commercial, recreational, and a school along the corridor. It provides regional access to I-4, which is just north. As part of this project, we did a review of 5 years of recent crash data, and we found that about half of serious injury crashes occurred at major intersections, primarily at the two ends of the corridor and Clay Pit Road and Old Hillsborough Avenue. We also found that vulnerable users are 4 times as likely to be involved in a serious or fatal crash along Mango Road. Next slide, please. So these are some of the improvements that we recommend, and they're summarized here, and they include adding sidewalk to connect the existing commercial with the park, improving the maintenance along the corridor, cleaning out the existing drainage structures, and there's also some tree growth that's impeding the sidewalk currently. We also are recommending adding curb and gutter at the intersection of Mango Road and Clay Pit Road. That's between 2 parks, so the curb and gutter provide more of a barrier between the vehicles and pedestrians. Next slide, please. Overall, for the corridor, we're also recommending some locations to improve the lighting, add signal backplates, crosswalks along the minor road, raise medians, and speed feedback signs. There's a current county CIP project at Old Hillsborough Avenue and Mango Road to add a roundabout, so that'll also improve the safety along the entire corridor. Next slide, please. So overall, our recommendations are more short-term focused, and they were developed in consideration with the public outreach. You can see some of the comments on this slide. Users describe Mango Road right now as dangerous, and they want to see a future vision of a more safer corridor that's focused on, bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles, and really kind of more of a multimodal approach. Next slide, please. So our second corridor is North 15th Street, which we just briefly heard about the improvements that are being proposed at 15th Street and Fowler. So this is very timely. Our corridor was 15th Street from Fowler Avenue to Fletcher. We did want to say notably on this corridor that 30% of the severe crashes involved either pedestrians or bicyclists, not compared to 16% of crashes just countywide. So the serious crashes and the pedestrian crashes, they often occurred by the existing transit stops. This corridor contains the highest transit ridership numbers for users with disabilities, not something we saw several people in wheelchairs when we were walking the corridor. There's a few existing gaps in the sidewalk on the west side. The sidewalk is only about 4 to 5 feet in areas. And when we did the public outreach over time and time again, we saw comments asking about more lighting, slowing down vehicles, filling those sidewalks, gaps, and improving the existing sidewalk that's out there. So that really drove the recommendations. There is an ongoing county project in the area, which is addressing a lot of these needs. Next slide, please. So the project includes adding raised crosswalks and pedestrian signage and RRSBs, which will improve access to those existing
Hello?
Uh-oh.
So we seem to have lost audio.
Chair, we can hear it in the virtual space. Apparently, maybe
Right.
it's difficult in the room.
Lost it in the room, but now I think it's back.
I know. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we missed about the last minute or so of what you were saying. And just before you start, after you're done, I see Commissioner Kemp and Councilman Dingfelder both wanted to be recognized, but we'll wait until after you're done with the 15th Street portion of the presentation.
Sure. I'll just recap briefly that last part about there's an ongoing Hillsborough County project that's addressing some of the pedestrian needs in the area. They're implementing raised crosswalks, pedestrian signage, RRSBs, as well as lighting improvements, so LED lighting to really increase visibility along the corridor for all users. They're also planning on adding sidewalk on the west side where there are 2 existing sidewalk gaps, so that will be completing the pedestrian network. Our report recommended long-term visions for the corridor to provide further enhancements to these multimodal facilities. Our report included 2 alternatives with wide 8-foot sidewalks and different type of curb options to provide that separation from vehicles and pedestrians. And we also provided a 3rd alternative with a buffered bicycle lane. The design phase for these longer term improvements will consider the latest typical sections from Hillsborough County as well as additional public feedback. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Commissioner
I
Kemp?
didn't have any until after. I'm sorry.
After the entire thing
Yeah,
is
yeah.
over. All right. Councilman Dingfelder, did you want to be recognized?
Oh, no, I'm good right now. Maybe when she's done.
Got it. All right. We'll come back to you both at the end of the full presentation.
Okay, great. This is Wyatt Bowers with Atkins, hoping you can hear me this morning.
We can.
Great. I'm going to be presenting on Gibson Drive, which also includes a portion where it becomes Boyette Road, as well as 78th Street. So on this first slide with Gibson again, we have about a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit today, and you can see the daily traffic numbers are pretty high, 35 to 40+ thousand. The corridor is 4 lanes on the west side, and then between US 301 and Balm Riverview, it is 6 lanes. There are sidewalks on both sides, but there are gaps. The same is true with bike lanes, and then there is a current bus route along the corridor. Next slide. So when we looked at the crash data, you can see this is over 5 years, over 1,100 crashes. That's a very significant number, keeping in mind, though, that it is a very heavily traveled corridor. About 50% of the crashes occur during the peak hours. You can see there a significant number during daylight. And also over 50% are rear end crashes. which is consistent with the heavy traffic and the congestion that is seen on this corridor in the peak hours. You can also note some fatal and serious crash injuries there, as well as the bicycle and pedestrian number. It's a very low number. There actually aren't that many folks that are walking and biking on this corridor, but there are some spot locations where we do see decent pedestrian activity. Next slide. So when the survey that we put out in conjunction with the MPO, we used a software that allowed people to provide us comments online. We got over 100 comments on this corridor, which mainly dealt with things like speed, lighting, the difficulty crossing, and that was for pedestrians and vehicles, but also some significant comments regarding congestion and just how long it takes to get from, for example, from 301 to I-75 in the morning. Next slide. So some of the corridor strategies that we're recommending include reducing the speed limit just slightly from 45 to 40. It might be nice to go lower, but the way this corridor is designed, it is something where I think people will feel like they should be going faster. So we're looking to slow it just a little bit and narrowing the travel lanes to provide an expanded outside buffer. You can see that on the image at the top right. We are not recommending putting bike lanes on the portion of the corridor that doesn't have them right now, as again, the traffic is too heavy. We are instead suggesting that there is a separate side path on the south side of the road. And then another major recommendation here is to restrict the left turns coming out of driveways by closing all of the median openings and just making them restricted left turn. You can see that again at the image at the top. This is really important as the facility may in fact be widened. It's in the long range plan to be widened to 6 lanes, and crossing a 6-lane road is a very difficult thing to do. Next slide. So moving on to 78th Street is a very different corridor. This is about 1.25 miles. Again, the speed limit is posted at 45, which in this case seems very fast for this corridor. The traffic numbers are under 20,000 ADT. We have 4 lanes with a continuous center turn lane. There's only a traffic signal at either end of the corridor, and there is one related traffic signal related to the school crossing in between. Otherwise, there's no, we'll say, safe place for people to cross the road as pedestrians. Again, there are no bike lanes on the corridor today, and we do have a bus route. Next slide. So the crash total here is lower than what I showed you for Gibsonton, but again, the volumes are significantly lower, so proportionally we're probably in the same range. What's interesting here is that the most common crash type is left turns, and in some cases that's left turns coming out of driveways. There is a sight distance issue, which I'll show you in just a second. But also, again, you can see a heavier number of bicycle pedestrian crashes as a percentage. This is a much heavier pedestrian traveled corridor, and so something that we're taking into consideration with the recommendations. Next slide. So again, what we got here in the map comments, we received fewer, but we still got a pretty decent mix of comments from folks. But you can see one here where there was a comment about limited visibility entering traffic from the side roads, and that has a lot to do with the fences alongside, as well as some of the street poles that are in the sidewalk, and again, the heavy speed of traffic. Next slide. So our recommendations here are to reduce the speed limit from 45 to 35, again, narrowing the travel lanes to 11, also narrowing the center median, which would allow us to provide, again, an outside buffer that will help with the sight distance issue for people that are turning out from driveways. It'll also help to keep the speed slower on the corridor. This is not wide enough to provide a bike lane in either direction. We just don't simply have enough width on the roadway within the curb to curb space to do that. But we would like to install raised landscaped islands in sporadically across the corridor. Also, we have about 5 or 6 mid-block crossing recommendations, and relocating bus stops to those crossings to provide as safe as crossing as possible. There's a couple of other recommendations there, reconstructing the sidewalks to provide a buffer by the paving of the buffer space, which in some cases is gravel or grass. That will help give us a wider sidewalk, which could be okay for bicycles. But I would note that a long-term possible recommendation for this corridor is to consider a lane elimination or a road diet down to 2 lanes in each direction with the center turn lane. That the traffic volumes are right on the border of a 2 to 4 lane, but that would give you the ability to add bike lanes on the corridor. And with that, I think we're done.
Before we move on to the next item, let me just note, Commissioner Smith, your hand is raised. Did you want to speak now, or do you want to wait until the end of the presentations?
I'll get in line behind the others.
And Commissioner Overman, what about you?
Thank you. I do want to make reference to what was presented in this particular illustration, and it really is more of a question for our FDOT representatives and possibly those that are working on staff on road design. You know, in this presentation, there were several recommendations, and we're redesigning a road that that clearly has volume on it, but also has a lot of development on it. And yesterday, we at the Board of County Commission at a land use meeting was evaluating an area that is in fact growing and adding additional capacity, adding additional traffic, and adding additional, suburban area development. My question as it relates to these recommendations for this particular road, but any road that has this kind of capacity on it, is are these recommendations being adopted by FDOT when they work within Hillsborough County, specifically Hillsborough County, but also, by our land use engineers? Are they traveling through so that when redevelopment or development occurs, that these are the practices that are adopted in the road design recommendations by the transportation staff, whether it be FDOT or our county staff? And I'll stop there.
Ms. Alden, can you take that?
Sure, that was a pretty broad question, and I think the commissioner is asking about design standards, and the work here is focused on going back and retrofitting some of the roads that have been built in the past, and that's a whole area that needs attention, but making sure that new roads that are built from here, like the commissioner mentioned, land use, so as new developments come online, and new roads are built or upgraded, are they built to better standards than the roads that we have built in the past? And I think the answer to that is yes. The DOT has some great guidelines as part of their Complete Streets guidance that they issued a couple of years ago, and Hillsborough County has been working to incorporate those into their transportation tech manual, and I think that will be coming back to the county commission before too long.
Excellent. That's where I'm going. We do have a significant amount of building going on in the county, whether it be commercial or residential, schools, fire safety, all those kinds of things. And we have a significant number of roads that are managed by not only the county, but also FDOT. And so the design standards, I believe, and the recommendations that are coming out of this particular study do need to be incorporated within our design standards. And what that process looks like does need to happen as quickly as possible, as we are continuing to see deaths on the road. And Vision Zero cannot be accomplished if we aren't consistent in those design standards for any retrofitting that's occurring within Hillsborough County. And I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. And why don't we move on with the rest of the presentation, and then we'll go to our...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Harry, can you hear me?
I can. I have you on my list of people to speak after the presentation is completed. Did you want to say something now?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, because I gotta run and buzz out of this meeting. So I just wanted to get my 2 cents in right now, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, Eric. My comment is that I don't mean to be parochial. This is a great batch of work in terms of these 8 projects areas, but they're all in the county. I know that, I guess I've been informed that the reason they were picked is they're the worst 8 locations in the total county, but I think next go round, I think we need to include some city locations. Vision Zero has been embraced, by the city and by our residents. And if it's a matter of funding, then you need to, somebody needs to tell the various city council members what sort of funding would be appropriate for this, and we'll find the funding. But we need to do some of this in the city, and I would guess that Temple Terrace and Plant City might feel the same way. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't mean to be parochial and I don't mean to be critical. This is great work, but we need to expand it all across the county.
Thank you for that. I see Ms. Silva, you have your hand raised.
Press that, please. Definitely. We have a Vision Zero list of the top most dangerous corridors, and we go from the top down. This was a special case of a special $500,000 that the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners allocated specifically to start addressing their top corridors. So that's why it's unincorporated only. But yes, we definitely balance and go to work on all corridors for all 4 jurisdictions. This was a special case with special funding.
All right. Well, Ms. Silva, like I said, whatever funding is needed to help you do this great work, please notify Mr. Citro, Mr. Maniscalco, and myself. Thank you.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Okay, we are going to go back and go ahead and finish the presentation, and after that, we will hear from Commissioners Kemp and Smith.
All right, thank you. Good morning. This is Chris Keller with Tyndall Oliver. I'm going to handle the next 2 corridors for you. The first one being Fletcher Avenue. I really looked at the western part of Fletcher Avenue between Armenia Avenue and Nebraska Avenue. Next slide, please. So a little overview. So Fletcher Avenue, not familiar with it, it's a 4-lane roadway. Most of the corridor has a center 2-way left turn lane throughout it, so no raised medians or anything dividing it. The existing posted speed limit throughout most of the corridor is 45 miles per hour. The part around I-275 between Florida and Nebraska does have a slightly lower existing posted speed limit of 40 miles per hour. In a 5-year crash, or in a 5-year time frame, there were a little over 900 crashes on the corridor, which resulted in 26 severe injury, so incapacitating injury and fatal crashes. Looking at those locations, the top locations, not really a surprise, kind of centered around the signalized intersections. But for the top severe crash types, we're really looking at angle left turn crashes, so people making turns onto and off of the corridor, and rear end crashes, which is pretty common, especially on higher speed corridors. Next slide, please. As Lisa and was mentioned in some of the other ones, we did have some public outreach with this, and pretty consistent with what we're seeing from a crash standpoint. The results that we got back really kind of focused on the speed, that the traffic is too fast out there, that intersections need looked at, and that people have a hard time turning off of the Fletcher Avenue and turning onto Fletcher Avenue, especially with left turn movements. Next slide, please. So to address some of those concerns and the safety issues that we've seen from the crash review and from looking at the corridor itself, really focused on speed management. And we've established a 35 mile per hour target speed for Fletcher Avenue for the entire corridor. Now, to achieve this target speed, we understand that there are certain design elements that need to take place. So a lot of the corridor-wide and site-specific improvements are really, were really kind of designed and put together to help us achieve this 35 mile per hour target speed. So looking at things like how can we address signal timing and phasing to better coordinate traffic through the corridor at that speed. Looking at raised medians throughout the corridor to help divide up the center left turn lanes and to create a vertical element to help to slow down traffic. And then other general safety stuff, looking at roadway lighting, traffic signal back plates, consistent pavement and crosswalk markings, and then some sidewalk maintenance here and there. For the most part, the sidewalk's in good shape, but there were a few locations that could use some immediate improvement. Next slide. So a couple examples, I mentioned the corridor-wide ones, but so raised medians, we identified specific locations where we felt that these could be implemented that would not really kind of impact or largely impact access along the corridor, but would be significant enough to potentially help us get to that 35-mile-per-hour target speed. Some enhanced pedestrian crossings, a potential new traffic signal at Boulevard Avenue, and then various intersection enhancements, a lot of them dealing with kind of reducing the curb radii. So type of stuff that we saw presented along Fowler Avenue. So similar type of improvements there. Next slide. All right, so the next corridor that we're looking at was Lynn Turner Road, which is kind of in the Citrus Park area of the county. And we looked at the segment between Ehrlich Road and Gun Highway. Next slide. Lynn Turner Road is a 2-lane roadway. Large parts of it are an undivided roadway, so no median. And then there are some parts that have a center 2-way left turn lane on it as well. The posted speed limit along Lynn Turner Road is 45 miles per hour throughout the whole thing. Don't really show it on here, but the general kind of context in the land use along here is it's really kind of residential. There's an elementary school along this roadway. There's some commercial uses near Ehrlich Road and near Gun Highway, but it's a mix of single-family neighborhoods, multifamily, some churches, and as mentioned, an elementary school along here. During our crash review period, there were over 400 crashes that resulted in 17 severe injury crashes. And similar to Fletcher Avenue, we saw here a lot of the top severe crash types really dealing with angle and left turn crashes and rear ends, and then those being focused at the signalized intersections, and then also a good number of the rear end crashes and the angle left turns in that 2-way or that 2-lane undivided section. So where you have vehicles traveling, stopping, attempting to make a left turn, they're waiting for traffic, oncoming traffic to clear and for a gap, and either rear end crash that way or they misjudging the gap, resulting in an angle or left turn crash along the corridor. Next slide. The public outreach on this, kind of similar to what we heard along Fletcher, calls for lowering the speed limit, that the speed limit doesn't really match the context and the feel of the road, and heard a lot about need for more and enhanced lighting along the corridor. Next slide, please. So again, our improvements for Lynn Turner Road really kind of focused on speed management. So establishing a 35-mile-per-hour target speed along here. So being able to get it from 45 miles per hour down to 35, we felt really better matches the context of that corridor. Looking at corridor-wide improvements of roadway and sidewalk lighting throughout the corridor. Put side street crosswalks. There are marked crosswalks along the corridor, so along the kind of those side street intersections, but it's not consistently done. So just making sure that those are consistently there. And there aren't any bicycle facilities on Lynn Turner Road. There is some right of way, but there's drainage, and those are kind of bigger things to get into and expensive when we get into drainage. But there could be opportunities for some wide sidewalks throughout the corridor that might be a little easier to do than widening the roadway, provide on-road bike lanes out here. The next slide. Some of the site-specific things, I mentioned some enhanced pedestrian crossings. There's a couple opportunities, we think, for some new mid-block crossings out here. At Gun Highway, we feel that there's an opportunity to provide some kind of gateway feature to kind of visually let drivers know as they're turning off of Gun Highway or coming from Anderson Road to the south onto Lynn Turner Road, that the context is changing to visually remind them to try to slow down. Looking at access enhancements, so potential for carving out some left turn lanes, it's kind of in the immediate, and then in the future, some potential for some roundabouts along the corridor. And then on the section that has the existing center two-way left turn lane, looking at some raised median options there as well to kind of help control the access and then provide a vertical element to help slow down traffic on the corridor. And then that's it for that. I'm going to hand it over to Matt.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Weaver with Element Engineering Group, and I'm going to talk to you about the Bruce B. Downs corridor from Fowler to Beers. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the corridor in general. It's just under 2 miles from that Fowler intersection all the way up to Beers, where it starts to go into the turn where it was recently reconstructed. We have a 45-mile-an-hour speed and very heavy traffic on this segment of the corridor, between 40 and 50,000 ADT. We have numerous transit routes related to HART, as well as the USF Bull Runner route. So lots of things going along this corridor, lots of pedestrian generators, lots of traffic crossing and along the corridor as well. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the crash data. We have seen a fairly consistent number of pedestrian crashes, pedestrian and bicycle crashes, but you can tell overall this is one of the highest crash corridors in the county with almost 1,600 total crashes. And it's one of those where it's very focused at the signalized intersections. And then we also have severe crashes at some of the unsignalized intersections throughout the corridor, whether it's Campus Hill Drive, Richard Silver Way, any of those along that area. So almost consistently through the corridor, we just see a lot of crash problems related to some of the speed along the corridor, as well as the visibility. So again, you can see 3% of the total crashes are pedestrian and bicycle crashes, but they make up almost 30% of the fatal and severe injury crashes along the corridor. So that's definitely why this was one of the top 8 corridors selected for further study. Next slide, please. So to address that, we're really excited. This is one of those opportunities where the county has recognized some of the things that are going along on this corridor and has already got projects underway and nearing construction, actually. So there's a construction of a traffic signal with pedestrian features on all 3 legs right at Campus Hill Drive that's already upcoming. Also a signal that will be constructed and implemented at Richard Silver Way in the very near future. And then the third project here that's listed, all 3 of these projects are going to be combined into one construction project by the county. And that's going to resurface the entire segment from USF Pine Drive all the way to 131st/Holly Drive and convert to 11-foot travel lanes and then have a 7-foot physically buffered bike lane. It's actually physically, there's a narrow separator between the bike lane and the travel lane. Additionally, there's a sidewalk gap along the east side of the corridor north of Pine to Holly. That gap is going to be filled with a new 10-foot sidewalk along the east side, and then the project is also going to widen the sidewalk along the west side of the road. So there's 3 very good projects that relate a lot to what the recommendations included in this study were, and we're very excited about those upcoming projects. And they do include green markings for the conflict areas with regards to the bike lanes, as well as the transit features. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up as well. And also one of the general things that was already discussed slightly was just Hillsborough County has those updates to the Transportation Technical Manual that are coming that include context-sensitive typical sections, and just anything that we can do in the future projects that come along will be great. Next slide, please. Like the other projects, we did public outreach as part of this effort, and really it focuses on speed and crossing the road safely. So just a lot of the same messaging where speed management is going to be a key moving forward in achieving the Vision Zero goals of the county. Next slide, please. And then corridor-wide recommendations. A lot of this, again, was focused on speed management because we know how that impacts the severity of crashes. So we're looking at a 35-mile-an-hour target speed from Fowler to Fletcher. Those projects that the county is going to be constructing here in the very near future definitely will impact and make that 35-mile-an-hour target speed achievable with that on-street physically buffered bike lanes, the more narrow travel lanes, and then also the pedestrian pedestrian access along the corridor. And then from Fletcher to Beers, we're looking at a 40-mile-an-hour design speed, and then recommendations for a full shared use path on the east side of the road, and look at more opportunities for some pedestrian connectivity. We're looking at additional enhanced crosswalk markings for side street crossing areas, green pavement markings for the bicycle lane conflict areas, and then really looking at some of those maintenance issues for ponding in the pedestrian and bicycle walking space to make sure that people don't have to walk out into the road to get around a pond to access a transit stop. Also, we're recommending continued upgrades to the corridor for LED lighting. Some of that has already happened, and we just want to make sure that continues. Also look at some signalized intersection improvements related to LPIs, the leading pedestrian intervals, and then push button actuated right turn on red restrictions to really make sure both drivers and pedestrians can make really good decisions about what's going on and put everybody in a position to make a safe choice. Next slide. And then just some real quick spot recommendations. I really want to highlight what Vishaka presented on earlier. We basically had developed some recommendations to pass along to the department related to upgrading the right turn geometry and truck aprons and pedestrian improvements at that intersection. And what you saw Vishaka present on was exactly what we had recommended. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to acknowledge the partners that we have in this Vision Zero effort, that, hey, we're all coming together, we acknowledge there's a problem, and things are being done about it in a very quick manner. So you can see some of the other recommendations that we're making, but potential bulb outs at the Fletcher Avenue intersection to reduce the crossing distance, some other opportunities to do protected only signal timing by time of day for left turns to really reduce those severe left turn and angle crashes. So lots of opportunities, but things are already happening, and it's just great work by all the team members that are involved in these projects. Next slide.
Good morning. This is Paula Flores with Grayman Peterson, and let's jump right into Sheldon Road. Next slide, please. So Shelton Road is a 5-lane county arterial through town and country, serving over 30,000 vehicles per day with a posted speed limit of 45 miles an hour. So here's some really interesting facts about the corridor. A total of 912 crashes occurred from 2014 to 2018, resulting in 8 fatalities and 19 incapacitating injury crashes in the corridor. 74% of those fatal and serious injury crashes actually occurred at the residential side streets, not at the major intersections of Hillsborough and Waters. And they actually occur during non-peak hours when speeds are higher and volumes are lower. 60% of the fatal and serious crashes also had contributing factors such as failure to yield the right-of-way, following too closely, careless behavior, and red light running. 64% of the ped bike crashes actually occurred, believe it or not, in a legal crosswalk. That clearly indicates a lack of yield to pedestrian and bicycle users within the corridor. And this corridor has 28 intersections. In addition, it has 24 bus stop locations. Yet over the 2-mile segment, it only has 4 marked crossing locations for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross safely in the corridor. Next slide. So we did have a similar to all the other projects, a public engagement effort that was very successful with over 390 responses to our survey on operations and needs in the corridor. Of the responders, it was interesting to see that 72% that did respond are daily users on the corridor, with 21% of them either walking, taking a bike, or even using the bus. But when we asked if they felt safe along Sheldon Road, using a bike was the lowest, with 1.7 average rating out of 5 stars. Walking received only 2 stars, and even driving on Sheldon only received 3 stars out of 5. So, and by far, the biggest complaint was about speeding in the corridor. Next slide, please. And per the MPO Speed Management Action Plan, the toolkit that was developed through that process, the countermeasures identified on this slide for Shelton Road were grouped into the 3 categories identified in the Speed Management Plan, which is countermeasures for safe people, for safe streets, and for safe operations. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of these additional that talks about adding additional pedestrian crossings, lighting on a corridor, traffic calming, extending school zones, and so forth. Next slide. So this is a very succinct list of the improvements that should be applied consistently throughout the Shelton Road corridor. And these are often called systemic improvements. More specifically, we're calling out for high visibility crossings, more crossings, wider bike lanes. We have bike lanes on this corridor, but they are substandard. We're also calling for narrower travel lanes to accommodate improved bicycle facilities. Green bike lane conflict zone markings that are absent throughout the entire corridor. Street lighting and pedestrian lighting. ADA compliance. We found a lot of curb ramps and sidewalks with poor maintenance and not in compliance. Transit stop enhancements and reducing the target, the design, and ultimately the posted speed limit to 35 miles per hour along the corridor. Next slide, please. So what you see in front of you now, in our next step was to conceptually identify how some of these countermeasures could be applied throughout the corridor. This is a segment of Sheldon Road from Moore to Lighthouse Landing that shows the application of more pedestrian crossings with refuge islands, narrowing the median openings. We got a lot of comments about people being confused, or you'd have 4, 5, 6 cars lined up in the medians trying to make turns in and out of that corridor. Adding more shade trees for traffic calming up and down and so forth. Next slide. The next segment we're showing here is at the Town and Country Greenway Trail. We have this wonderful trail connection here, but we're talking about recommendations to modify the traffic signal timing to better reflect the need of not just the pedestrians and cyclists here, but also the traffic on Sheldon itself. We're talking about adding signs to let people, users of the trail system, know that there is a connection to the Upper Tampa Bay Trail just north of this corridor limit. Again, narrow medians and also introducing more shade trees throughout the corridor. This corridor is very fortunate to have a very wide median as it is, but is deplete of any landscaping. Next slide. Another of this segment is between Crown Boulevard and Blue Lake. The recommendations for this segment, for example, include new traffic signals with pedestrian crossings where the highest crash fatalities have occurred. We're also talking about extension of the school zone throughout this corridor. We have 2 elementary schools and only one of them is covered in the current school zone limits. And again, more traffic calming throughout the corridor. Next slide. And the last example is at the Waters Avenue. This is one of the gateway features, gateway intersections, where we're showing and displaying the green bike conflict zones, not only to safeguard people using bikes going through some of the commercial driveways in the corridor, but also progressing through the intersection safely. We're calling for leading pedestrian intervals to allow pedestrians to cross in advance of vehicular traffic, no turn on red, and also the consideration of red light cameras at the gateway intersections, including here, not just at the Waters Avenue, but also Hillsborough Avenue. Next slide. So these are the Hillsborough County top 8 deadliest corridors. It is our ethical and moral obligation to apply as many of these tools and countermeasures as much as possible to make our streets safe. Every life lost deserves your consideration to save others. One death on our streets is one too many. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 commissioners in the queue to speak. I do want to point out it is about 5 minutes to 12, and I'm afraid that we're going to lose our in-person quorum before we take this last vote. So let me go to Commissioner Kemp and then Commissioner Smith, and we'll proceed.
Thank you. I'll try and First, I just wanted to recognize, I think Ms. Flores, the last presenter, just got an award, recognition for her good work, and I don't have the details with me right now, but I'd like to congratulate her. She's done wonderful work for us, and I'm very pleased about that. Like to just remind everyone, we do have the second highest pedestrian bicycle deaths in the nation, not just 1 year or 2 years. This is year after year after year after year in Hillsborough County. And 7 out of 10 of the top most dangerous places in America are the metro areas are in Florida. And a lot of that is dangerous by design. It's the growth we've had. It's the poor investment in doing safety. And we've had I think we have a terrible culture in many ways of just not even an expectation of safety. And that's why we suffer from great numbers of pedestrian bicycle deaths, also car crash deaths. But as Ms. Flores mentioned as well, I think we sometimes forget the incapacitating effects of some of these crashes on people where they have lifelong injuries and suffering due to this. So I just wanted to say all that. With that said, I'm thrilled, again, about this study. I will tell you that I was the one who put it on as a budget item at the County Commission. And I just want to say that I only discovered by accident that it wasn't meant to be funded till 2024, when would be my last year on the commission. And I was kind of like, this is crazy. We need to start moving these projects ahead at a way faster pace. It was not intended to only do, at least in my mind, to only do county roads. But I think if you rank it with crashes and then pedestrian and bicycle, if you just do pedestrian bicycle, I'm guessing your top corridors would be a lot more in the city. Whereas if you put in the crashes or some weighted measure of that, then you get the county corridors. At any rate, I'm very happy with whatever we move forward. And I just want to make clear that the county is certainly not prohibited. The city is part of the county. So that's part of my message. And so that wasn't like an intended thing. And I'm just I really would like to move this because I feel so strongly, and I'm so pleased. And I'm also pleased. I'm tired of waiting for these master projects that go for a decade. These are low-cost things that we can do quickly to save lives and save injuries. And so I'm really all for these projects where we just move into this as quickly as possible and then do the best, finest fix, hopefully in the future, but really just move to real fast to look at the design, the problems, and fix them as well as we can for the interim till we get the very highest of standards.
Thank you. We'll come back to you to move the item once we've heard from everyone, Commissioner Smith, and then Councilman Citro, and then if there's anyone else that wants to speak.
Quickly, I think that these are, well, I've been told these are all in the top 20 crash corridors, and delighted to see these being addressed. We have certainly more to go, but it's a great start. Gibson Drive in particular, that section from I-75 to Balm Riverview Road. By the way, Gibson Drive is the next Big Bend road in terms of poster child for terrible, terrible traffic and slowdowns and parking lot nightmare traffic. There aren't that many people using the road by bike and pedestrian now, that was pointed out by the presenter, but that's partly because it's so dangerous. So it's a really good idea to put a separate side path on streets like this instead of an on-street bike lane, because this street and streets like this that are intersecting with our intersections have a kind of a particular mindset in the drivers. They are getting on the interstate, they are coming off the interstate, and they are have that highway mentality already when they're driving on these roads of high speed and low expectations of sharing the road with bicycles and pedestrians. also, because of the frustration on Gibsonton Road, like Big Bend Road, you get this road rage mentality that can be add to the danger for bicyclists and pedestrians. The next ones coming up behind Gibsonton will be Rodine Road, Balm Riverview Road, where we're running into these substandard roads being used for a whole lot of mushrooming development coming onto them without being brought up to standard of level of service that can accommodate that capacity. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilman Citro?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A wonderful presentation on all these roads that are of concern. Ms. Flores, I'd like to congratulate you on the first person in this report talking about no turn on reds. I would like to see more stats on how many accidents have happened, whether they be vehicular or pedestrian or bikes, that are caused by people making turns on red lights, and how effective these signs might be on more intersections to saving lives due to crashes because of people looking left while turning right on red. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this report.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. My question is centered around, once we get all of the corridors and underway, do we go back and just evaluate what we thought was going to happen? For example, I think it's just an addition to the previous speaker and what he said, that we want to make sure that we evaluate the outcome of the actions we've taken.
Ms. Alden, do you want to address that?
Sure, that happens with a lot of these safety projects, that there are before and after studies conducted. One recent one was the Fletcher Avenue segment that's closer to the university. And we saw there that the pedestrian crossing features and the speed reduction traffic calming that actually reduced the severe crashes by half over a 3-year period.
Wow. These are great recommendations, and going to help improve our safety across the board. We just want to make sure that we definitely see the benefit that we expected initially. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and move this last item. Commissioner Kemp has proposed the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Myers has seconded the item. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We can very quickly, Executive Director, do you have anything to report?
We have a printed annual report for you in the form of your annual calendar. We'll be delivering that to your offices or mailing them to you. And also, I wanted to let you know that there are now online orientation webinars for new board members available through the Florida MPO Advisory Council. Please see me or Cheryl if you'd like us to sign you up for that.
Thank you. I don't see any old or new business. I want to thank everybody for their attendance and diligence today. This was an excellent meeting. We made some real progress on safety issues. I see some very happy members in the room and also online, and we want to wish everyone a very good rest of the day. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Good job, Mr. Chair. Good job.